Welcome back. Well, coming into the bottom of the hour, you're watching the Fox Business Network. Iranian state media quoting its supreme leader as calling recent mass protests against the government a conspiracy involving Saudi Arabia, the U.S., and Israel, without offering any evidence. Not talking about how bad the economy is and its stewardship there. Iran also still not disclosing statistics on the injuries, arrests, and deaths in its crackdown on protests there. Trey Yingst has more from Jerusalem. Trey.
Liz, with the internet in Iran now restored, the world is getting a closer look about what exactly happened last week during nationwide demonstrations. Video shows crowds of people running from security forces who are firing live ammunition. Also, there are new images of citizens being arrested and processed in a detention facility. More than 140 demonstrators were killed last week as protests erupted over rising gas prices in at least 20 different Iranian cities. That according to a human rights group. Experts say the protests that took place are different from the 1979 Islamic Revolution, since the current regime has deep support and loyalty from security forces and the army. The Iranian regime has a tight grip on the civilian population, and many have been deterred from going to the streets, making it difficult for the current anti-government movement to gain widespread support. Last Friday, the United States sanctioned Iran's information minister responsible for cutting the internet, freezing any of his property under U.S. jurisdiction. One U.S. official told Fox the decision to take down the internet access was unacceptable, but not unexpected. Iran's supreme leader this week is now blaming the United States for the deaths of their citizens last week, saying America encouraged, quote, thugs to kill people in the streets.
It was a deep, extensive, and very dangerous conspiracy that cost the U.S. so much money and effort. They wanted to use an opportunity to carry out this move, which was an act of destruction, arson, murder, and vandalism under the pretext of gasoline.
What you just heard is Iranian propaganda. Iran has a long history of blaming both the United States and Israel for violence within its own borders. There is no evidence to support the claims put forward by Iran's supreme leader, the Ayatollah Khamenei. Liz?
Trey Yingst in Jerusalem, thank you so much. Okay, we have an update. More than 730 banks in Iran, 140 government buildings, gas stations, dozens of government bases were torched, lit up, put on fire. Let's bring in my next guest. He's strategic advisor at White Fox Defense. He's Brett Velikovich. Brett, Iranian officials, good to see you. 200,000 protesters were involved in the rioting. The largest, it could be the largest protest ever against a religious dictatorship. They want democracy there. They want freedom.
Exactly. And look, in the end, it's the Iranian people who are going to be the ones that are going to have to rise up and revolt against the evil courses of action of the regime and the hardliners at the top. I mean, the people of Iran were already struggling financially from these harsh U.S. sanctions. And now with this 50% increase in fuel prices imposed virtually overnight by the regime countrywide, it's easy to see why citizens of that country are going to not be able to handle much more large-scale economic pressure like this. And it's just, in my opinion, a lot of what's going on is going to backfire. The Iranian regime just implemented the most comprehensive, large-scale internet blackout that's ever been recorded. We've seen internet blackouts before from countries trying to quell protesters, but nowhere near at this level at all. And so now that we're seeing sort of this internet, get back online, we're seeing the true brutality of the regime. The security forces are killing innocent protesters. They're beating them with metal irons. They're firing from the tops of state government-run buildings, and in the end, it's only going to backfire, and we're going to continue to see more protests in the future.
Let's say on that, the death toll in Iran may be higher than what we've been hearing. Reports are coming in. The death toll could be at least 218 people killed in these protests, 1,900 injured, 7,000 arrested. To your point, Iran, according to Amnesty International, used snipers from rooftops and helicopters to shoot into crowds of protesters. I know that the internet has been partly restored. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo says he now has nearly 20,000 videos of a violent suppression of what Iran did to crack down. Let's show what the Secretary of State is saying about solidarity with the people wanting democracy in Iran. Your reaction to all of this, sir? Brett, your take on this?
Yeah. Absolutely. Look, I mean, the Secretary Pompeo is right, and the Trump administration understands, again, that it's the Iranian people who are going to be the ones that are going to be able to stop this regime in the end. And what all this blaming on the U.S. for these protests is just absolutely absurd. I mean, they tried this in a number of different ways to blame the U.S., but the Iranian people are smarter than that. I mean, they're not as isolated as they once were. The regime is trying to isolate them by blacking out the internet, but in the end, they know exactly that regime is funding external terrorist groups instead of focusing on what's important internally to their own economy. And the administration's policies right now are just destroying this, their oil-reliant economy, which has seen rising inflation, rampant unemployment. We're seeing their own government's corruption absolutely through these videos that are now leaking online. And I think in the end, again, we're going to start to see more and more of these waves of protests that are in the end going to work into our favor.
Brett Velikovich, thank you so much for joining us, sir. Good to see you.
Thanks, Liz.